Hey everybody, and welcome to this probably fairly long chat about Google Stadia and E3. Now, I think for the last couple of years or so, I've done videos based upon the different conferences from E3. This year I'm just going to do one video because I don't know if it was just me, but it didn't quite feel the same this year. I guess because PlayStation wasn't there, and there wasn't really, I don't know, I didn't really feel like there was any blockbuster announcements, really, personally. A couple of things got leaked before, as is always the way, but I didn't feel like I was going into E3 going, oh, I really want to see this, or I really want to know what's going to go on with this. I actually didn't even watch the conferences live. I just kind of caught up with them through highlights, or I think I watched the whole of the Microsoft one, but I already knew from the kind of Bethesda wasn't going to show Elder Scrolls or Starfield because they'd already said that, so I was like, okay, well, doesn't leave a lot left. So yeah, we'll chat about E3 in a minute, but first off I thought we'd chat about Google Stadia, because this has been kind of announced for a while. I don't really think I've spoken too much about it, but now we've actually had kind of a release date, a release price, and a better idea of what it's actually going to involve. So for those of you who don't know what Google Stadia is, this is Google's move into the console gaming market, as it were. But they're doing it in a slightly different way, as you would, I guess, expect. They're doing it via a streaming service, so there is no box, there is no hardware as such to buy, other than the controller, I guess. And every game you play is streamed. So from the positives of that, you don't have to worry about having the latest hardware, because it can pump down, dependent on your internet connection, which we'll go into later. It can pump down 4K 60 frames per second HDR at the highest specs, which sounds amazing, because you can see the price in the top right there. £119 is the Founders Edition. We'll go into what that includes, and I mean, to get true 4K, and I don't think we've quite discovered whether or not it's going to be kind of like the highest PC specs, or say the kind of level with like an Xbox One X. But to get that kind of high level, you'd usually be spending £400-500. If it is like high level PC 4K at 60, then you'd be looking at well over £1,000. So to get that for £119 is clearly massive. There's not many consoles you can get for £120 nowadays. Even if a Switch is still over £200. The last generation, PlayStation and Xboxes, yeah, you can get those for probably £60-70, but obviously, you're not playing any of the latest games on them. So I don't think an Xbox One is 120 quid yet. Let me just literally look this up. I think it's probably close. I know a PlayStation 4 isn't that cheap, just the base level PlayStation 4. So it kind of around, that's for the S, which is the one you would ideally go for, which is the newer version, which is better in every way. And that's about 150. You can get the older massive like Xbox Ones, the originals, for like 120. But again, you're talking about barely 1080p, to be completely honest with you, and certainly nowhere near 4K or 60 frames per second. So what you have here is a very attractive proposal. The other thing you have is the fact that you can take this with you where you're going. If you're a person who travels a lot, or maybe you want to take it to work or do something like that, you're not lugging a big console. You're literally just either plugging in your Chromecast or streaming device, or literally even just playing it on your iPad, and maybe even mobile phones. I believe the new Pixels are going to be the first ones. And that is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. You can get things like that nowadays through like Steam. You can kind of play your games, but it's not great, to be completely honest with you. And the biggest thing, which we're still kind of yet to see, because I don't think people have been that hands-on with it yet, is latency. And when we talk about latency, what we mean is the movement. So if you see my mouse cursor, there is virtually no latency there from where I'm moving the mouse to where I see it on screen there. When you start going via streaming and internet connections, which can introduce latency, and it could mean that you move it and then it can be an ever so slight delay, like a couple of microseconds, but that really can tell. It's one of the things which, if you have like a game mode on your TV, you'll kind of know about. My TV has one. I've got like an LG TV, and it's got a really good game mode, and when I turn that off, it's quite painful to play, and so I have to have it on, because then there's like virtually no latency. It's just the way it works. Google obviously are saying that the latency is ultra low. Of course they are. But we are yet to kind of find out what that will be, and that's going to be the make or break, because if there is no latency, or if there is very small perception of latency, then this will be a game changer. If it isn't, if there is that latency, then this could just be generation one. Some people are saying that the future is going to be streaming. Like, this is the way it's going to be, in the same way kind of Netflix and Amazon Prime and all this kind of stuff are there. That's the future of how people consume their media nowadays. I mean, that isn't true. There's lots of different ways people do it. People still go to the cinema to watch films, because they like that big experience, sitting in a cinema, or just the experience of getting out of the house and going somewhere, but also that, big giant screen with that big, 7.1 sound system, and enjoying that kind of, that experience of going to watch the latest blockbuster, and generally with friends and other people as well. People will still do that and still pay the money to go do that. I know, I worked in cinemas for 8 years. People also still, pay for, I know in America you have like cable, don't you? But in the UK, we have a TV license, which, is paid to watch the BBC channels. ITV and Channel 4 are advert driven, so they're free anyway. But, you have the TV license side of it. However, a lot of that is kind of going online. I mean, personally for me, I don't have a TV license, and I don't watch live TV at all. I will always watch catch-up TV, unless it's something like a sports game or something like that, and then I will just not watch it on the BBC. But I don't believe that it is the only way people are going to do things in the future. I just think it's going to be one of the ways that people do things in the future. As somebody who owns a PC, there is much more to it than just wanting to have the extra graphics, or the extra this, the extra that. There is, it's difficult to explain, because it's like people who own a really nice car. Like, listen, or maybe like they upgrade their car, they put new stuff in it, do this, or they own a really nice car. Like, listen, any car is going to get you from A to B. One car might be a bit smoother, one car might be a bit faster. You might just really like the look of one car. You can't just turn around and be like, okay, this is the only car everyone's going to have. This is your only option. Everybody has to have this car, because no matter how good that car is, people want to be different. People want to do different things. They want to have their own stamp on things. And definitely PC, building and things like that is a lot about having your own stamp on things. And I likened it to when I was growing up, and you had people were really into like custom cars, custom paint jobs, wheels, engines, all this type of stuff. People were spending thousands on that. Not me personally, but people were. And that kind of faded away a little bit. You see the way that the Fast and Furious movies used to be about that kind of street racing scene, and it's still there, but it's not as big as it once was. The streets of Britain used to be lined with, teenagers in their Vauxhall Novas with these giant exhausts on, which sounded like a Sherman tank was coming down the road, when in actual fact it's this tiny little hatchback car, 1 litre hatchback car. But that changed. You do not see that as much, and I think one of the things that replaced that was definitely people and that kind of PC building, or maybe it was that people who kind of grew up around that era then grew up, and as they had more income or just spent their money on different things, PC building became one of them. So I don't think Google Stadia is going to be the be all and end all. I don't think it's going to be the end of consoles, hardware. I just think it's going to be a different option for people, and for some people it's going to be a brilliant option, and for others it just isn't going to matter to them. And the one thing you can say is that the more options out there, the more competition, the better it is for us as consumers. People bemoan the Epic Store so much on PC, like, oh, it's so bad. They are, I'm not going to say idiots, because they have their reasons for disliking Epic, and I understand this, but competition is good. This is what people have to understand. Now, Steam is actually a good service. I don't think it's a bad service, but it clearly is overcharging the people developing the games. It clearly does have some issues, and if somebody comes along the line challenging Steam, then that is only a good thing, because that will either make Steam be better, or it could drive prices down, or it could mean that developers get more money from Steam, like that. The Tim Sweeney of Epic Games has said that's the reason why he is doing a lot of stuff on the Epic Store, is for the developers. And whatever you may think of that, Tim Sweeney, the guy who's the head of Epic, has been a developer for a very long time, and they're also licensed out their engine to people for very low prices, even free. So he gets kind of perceived as the devil by like a lot of PC gamers, and I think it's very ill judged by people who do not understand economics in any way, shape or form. So competition is good, trust me on this. People might turn around and think like, oh, but if people aren't spending money on PlayStation games, then they're not going to have the money to develop games. This is not the way it works. No, what that means is that they might not make as much money, but if you look at some of the profits that these companies are posting, look at how much profit, how much money in the bank Apple have, and they are doing nothing with that money. It is just sitting there. So the thing I would say is some companies could do with not making quite as much money to maybe up their game a little bit. Google's probably one of them, as ironic as that is. The other thing I would say is a lot of people have said that in terms of Stadia, like because it's Google and it's such a big company, like they're not going to let it fail. This is not a thing where it's like they're just going to abandon it if it doesn't pick up. That is very untrue, because in actual fact they're more likely to abandon it because they're such a big company who makes so much money off other things that they can afford to write off losses in the potentially nearly a billion, or certainly the hundreds of millions. They can afford to write those losses off because they make so much money off everything else. So those people who are saying like, oh well, yeah, it's kind of put your money in it because it's going to be around for a long time. It's not really that true, because same with someone like Amazon. Amazon have had they try so many different things out there, because they can afford for things to fail. Like sometimes a company can't afford for something to fail, and so they'll actually build on it. You see that with games as well a lot, where a company can't necessarily afford to abandon a game, so they'll actually just keep improving it, and then what you get is a good game at the end of it. And then some companies, EA, can just afford to abandon games completely because they're like, well, we'll just move on to the next thing. Write that one off as a tax loss. It's like with movies, big movie companies, they may only have like a 20% hit rate of movies that actually make money over the year, but those 20% make so much money that the other 80% they can just write off. That's the way it works. So I don't believe that this whole thing where it's like, it's not going to fail because it's Google and they're such a big company or something like that. It's like it could do, absolutely. In terms of first impressions, the controller looks okay. I mean, it does look a little bit like a cheap kind of PlayStation knockoff. Build quality, we'll have to wait and see. I'm not a big fan of the kind of cross pad there. I mean, firstly, I like the Xbox layout, but it doesn't look that good. But again, once it's in your hands, then you'll see. We have different buttons on here. There's like sharing buttons and things like that. So they'll be built in like recording and things like that, which is cool. And apparently the controller itself is linked up to the like servers. It's not like a pass-through controller. So the latency is much, much better when you actually use the proper controller. So that's something to consider, because as we'll go into later, when it launches properly, so Stadia arrives this November, which is if you have the Founders Edition, which we'll go into what that is, but the actual Stadia launches for free, so anybody can try it next year, and you can use any controller with it, but you may have some issues with latency depending on what your internet connection is. There's some Destiny stuff here. So eventually, as you can see, their idea is that they're going to have it on everything: laptops, tablets, TVs, PCs, phones, everything basically. If it can play apps, if it can have a Chromecast logged into it and it has internet connection, you can play it. The Pixels, you can see, are going to be the first phones from day one, but which it kind of makes sense, is their product at the end of the day. But I would imagine it will come to all phones at some point, because it would be madness not to do that. So they're saying 60 frames per second, 4K resolution, HDR support with 5.1 sound. Cool. I wouldn't, from what they've been saying, that's kind of what you would expect, really. HDR is always subjective. Like, HDR is kind of, it's one of those things where I feel like it's like HD was when it first came out, which is where it works very well in some things when people actually do their work on it. Or actually, probably 3D is 3D in films is probably a better matchup. So 3D in films, when it's done properly, and you can see they've actually used 3D cameras to record it, not just done it aftermath, and they've actually thought about the film playing in 3D. One of the best 3D films I've ever seen is Gravity with Sandra Bullock, and when we showed that in the cinema, for all our cinemas within London, we decided as a company that we would only show that in 3D. We showed no 2D ones because the 3D was so good that we felt that people should see it in 3D. Yes, of course, there was more money to be made, but there's not as much money as people would think, because you have to pay for the 3D license and pay for the extra equipment, etc., etc. But there was more money, but it was such a good 3D film that it was worth doing. And HDR, some games in HDR look amazing. Some games you don't even notice a difference and actually look better when you turn it off. Red Dead Redemption. That's there. Now, this is the interesting thing about what they're saying for your internet connection. So they're saying that a recommended minimum is around about 10 megabits per second. Or megabytes, sorry, per second, and that will get you about 720p at 60 frames per second with stereo sound. It's actually pretty good. 20 odd will get you 1080p and 60 with HDR, and then they recommend 35 per second for 4K HDR 60. That's not very high. I know there's some of you who are probably sitting out there, in the countryside going, I can't ever get that, and I completely understand that. I live in the countryside now, and I cannot get 35. When I moved into my new house, I had a look for internet connections, and the fastest they could promise me was 15. And I was like, holy crap. So I feel that pain, but, and this is the but, this is something which I don't see that many people actually talking about. Maybe because it might be a bit more localized to the UK rather than other parts of the world, and so apologies if I'm being very kind of UK based, but we have quite a good 4G network in the UK. I'm with a company called 3. They allow me to have a mobile hotspot, so in other words, I can use my mobile internet connection or my mobile phone as a server or router, if you like, to connect up everything to, and it only costs me the data that my plan has. As it happens, my plan has unlimited data, therefore I only pay my mobile phone bill. I don't have regular internet, and I manage to play online games with no problem. I get about 40 megabytes per second down, and I get about 5 or 6 up. The up isn't great, but that's kind of, I'm not paying any more than what I was. The only downside is I have to obviously be in my house to do that, which means I can't upload or download anything if I'm not here, but I sleep here overnight, so it's not too much of an issue. And it does mean that sometimes it gets a little bit like choppy if I'm using, like, say, watching TV and then downloading something or something like that. But honestly, it's completely livable and way better than it would have been if I had like 15. So I think some of the things which people are kind of missing out on here is the fact that 4G is pretty good in this country, and 5G is coming soon, like really soon, potentially this year, if not definitely next year. And 5G is blazing fast. Is it going to be cheap? No, absolutely not. But in the same way 4G wasn't cheap when that came out, in a couple of years it will be very reasonably priced. And I would say, how much are people paying nowadays for their internet in the UK? As somebody, when I lived in London, I had fiber internet, and I was still wasn't getting great. I was getting around 35, to be fair, which isn't great considering I was paying about £50 a month for that. Now I pay about £50 a month for my mobile phone, so overall with those two connections I was paying £100 a month for my internet and my mobile phone. So if 5G comes in and it can offer you blazing fast, 100 megabytes upwards, maybe even more than that, they're saying, but they're going to charge you £100 a month, I'm not actually going to be losing out, if that makes sense. I know that's a very kind of like, wow, you're rich type thing, but we're not talking about we're not talking about a situation where it's necessarily going to be for everyone. As I said before, there are some people who can't afford a brand new console, so I understand there's different ones. My point is that if that's, there are options for people out there who perhaps don't have the best network around, and I think, I genuinely believe that within a couple of years 5G will have overtaken your wired internet home connection. I think the infrastructure will be there, and you won't look back, and everything will just be via your mobile phone, and that will be your router. And then, in actual fact, probably the next generation of mobile phones with 5G will be all about how good are they at actually being your like home Wi-Fi, and companies will probably sell 5G like home Wi-Fi kits the same way I think you can get 4G ones at the minute. That will be, I truly believe that will be the future. Like, it won't be a case of this, have BT come round and hook up your wires and connectors in the walls and stuff like that. Everything will just be like that, wireless. I know some people are going to have a problem with that, and I'm just going to turn down this because I realise that no, actually I probably want that up. Sorry. What I probably want to do is turn off my sound. There we go. I realise that's not going to be for everyone, but as I said at the beginning, everything is about options. Different options to suit different people. Some people will just be like, you know what, I like my console, I like buying my games, I like trading my games in, I like doing all that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'm happy to continue to do that, and I believe that there will be that option for people to continue to do that. On consoles, look how many PlayStation 4s Sony have sold, like the most they've ever sold. So yeah, but I don't think these are unreasonable rates if what they're saying is true. We will see, when people get their hands on it in the real world, not in some, Google Fiber test like area or anything like that. In the real world, when people get their hands on this console, we will see what happens. Now, this is the thing which I guess is the stumbling point. A lot of people seem to think that when you paid your money for your Stadia, or you paid your monthly amount, because what you get for the 119 is the exclusive Night Blue Stadia controller. It's actually a nice colour, to be fair. I like the little orange accents. It's nice. You get a Chromecast Ultra, which, to be fair, is about £40 in itself. So that's, can be used for streaming, other things as well, whether it's music or TV and stuff like that. You get a Founder's Stadia name, which is a big deal for a lot of people. So I'm not going to, bemoan that. And you get 3 months of Stadia Pro, which is £8.99 a month. So that's like, call that £9, £27. Call that another 40 for the Chromecast Ultra. That's £67. You get to give away a buddy pass to a friend as well. So I don't know, call that another tenner. The controller, you can call that, like, controllers are usually about £30-40. So it adds up to being actually kind of like reasonable, I think, for the price, as well as the actual whole kind of service. And that's it coming in November. The issue people are kind of having with it is that, here's the Chromecast Ultra. The Stadia Pro is $8.99 a month, gets you 4K, 60 frames per second. What people thought was this was going to be like a Netflix subscription. You pay your monthly, you get access to all the games on there. That's not the way it is. You still have to buy games. And that, I think, is the problem that is going to happen, because there will be games free each month, say like you get with like the Game Pass or PlayStation Plus. You will get games for free, but say the latest, I don't know, whatever the hell game's coming out, the latest Call of Duty comes out, that obviously you won't be including your $8.99. You have to buy that. We don't know if that's going to be cheaper or if it's going to be the same price. If Google are smart, they'll do it so that they take a little bit of a hit on that, if they actually want this to succeed. Because for me, if I'm buying this and then I'm paying £50 for, I don't know, Call of Duty or something like that, and I'm a Call of Duty fan, then I'm like, well, I already got a PlayStation, I've already got a PC, where's the incentive for me to actually buy this on Stadia? You get Destiny 2 free, and it has crossplay, so you can upload your character and take it across with you, and you can play on the go and all that kind of stuff. And I think it is a very, very good concept of what they've done. We still need to see what it's like in reality, especially with if it does kick off really, big time. Are they going to have all the servers necessary to be able to run all of this? Is there going to be wait times, or etc., on certain games, and how much will the games cost? So there's a lot to kind of be said about Google Stadia. Am I going to pre-order it? Probably. In complete honesty, I actually kind of prefer the white controller, weirdly, because I'm just one of those people who likes, like, I've got a VR headset, Oculus Rift. When it came out, I got it because I just love technology and I love kind of seeing and that future. And if it was like £400 now, I wouldn't go near it. If it was £200, I wouldn't go near it. But 119, I'm like, I can kind of write that off a little bit, for the sake of it. What do the tech specs say? Okay, so this is just giving you the sizes and dimensions and everything of it. and what you actually do get with it as well. So yeah, will I get it? Yeah, probably. It's worth pointing out that so these games are more available for purchase on Stadia, so it does have a couple of exclusive games, but they're very indie type games. Like, I quite like the idea of, picking up some of these games, being able to play on the go on my laptop or whatever, or even just, going around someone's house and they don't have a console, and you can just be like, hey, just log into my Google Stadia account and, I'll show you this game. Like, I think there's real opportunity for it. Or even being like, hey, I'm going to go to, I'm traveling, I'm going to be in a hotel for 3 days. Well, I'll just take my, Chromecast and plug it in and kind of work there. Some people have said, it won't work with like hotel Wi-Fi, but as I said, like, I personally can use my phone as a mobile hotspot, so it wouldn't bother me too much. Or if you're one of those people who's lucky enough to, even if you're like, hey, I get an hour lunch break or something like that, I fancy playing a bit of Destiny 2, you just take this and play your Destiny 2 character. You don't have to cart around your PlayStation or whatever. So yeah, I think there's a lot of options here. I think it sounds pretty good. The two things which are going to make or break this is the latency is the number one key. How's the latency going to work? And number two is, I think, around the games and the prices. If they go full price for games, it's a very tough argument to make for people who already have consoles or PCs. I don't see a market where people who don't own consoles or PCs get into this, unless maybe you're thinking, well, I don't have a lot of money, £119 compared to, say, the next gen consoles, which are going to be however much money, £400, or a gaming PC, and I get to play. I mean, that's the other thing. Like, from what I know, you can only play Google Stadia with people who have Google Stadia. So if it was a case where it's like, hey, you can play with people who are on PC, it would be very appealing, for people there who'd say, but there's still a lot of questions around it. I think seems very good, and I'm excited to see what it is when it comes out and when I get it. The controller, build quality. This is the thing. Like, Google had the money to make this work, but it's whether or not they have the desire to do that. Whether or not the belief they have is that they're like, listen, we can take a hit on this for a few years because we believe this is the future, and we believe this is where a lot of our money is going to come from, and we'll make money back on it. Or they might be like, hey, let's test the market, with this. We have this product, it's all right, and let's see whether people take it up or not. Because I think if they have that approach, it's not going to work for them. They need to kind of commit to it. Whether or not they do, because they haven't committed to a lot of things, we'll actually see. But yeah, I'll probably pick it up, I think, and test it out and see how we go with it. I have been meaning to get a Chromecast Ultra for a while anyway, so we'll see. So that's the Google Stadia. Let me know what you think about it, whether or not you think you'll pick it up, or you won't bother, etc., etc. I can see a lot of cases for either side of the arguments, and I think people who write it off are a little short-sighted, but I also think that people who are necessarily like, everything in the future is just going to be streaming, are also a little bit long-sighted, if that makes sense. But anyway, we're going to move on to E3 now. As I said before, I wasn't particularly that excited for E3 this year. I wasn't particularly like hyped, not like, great, I've got to watch all of these news conferences. I don't know if that's just me personally, and if people were just as hyped, but I thought we'd go through some of the E3 games, have a look at them, and then we'll have a look at the Project Scarlet from Xbox, which is their next generation console, because they did announce that, although it was very much a kind of teasery type thing on there. The rumours as to why PlayStation are not going to appear is because they're going to hold their own big conference and announce their next console, which I don't even think is a rumour. I just think that's obvious, really. Now that Xbox have announced that theirs is coming in 2020, it's like obvious that PlayStation is going to come in 2020 if they've learned any lessons from the PlayStation 3, which I believe they have from there. So we'll get into Cyberpunk in a minute, don't worry. Nintendo, but I'm not going to go into like who won E3 because it's completely a subjective thing. It's a ridiculous concept that people have, because clearly if you're a Nintendo fan, this Nintendo conference was brilliant. I'll go through as to why I'm not that excited by it. The thing I am super excited about is Breath of the Wild 2. Obviously, I love Breath of the Wild. I thought it was an amazing game. I know some weird people didn't like it, but I absolutely adored it. I have sold my Nintendo Switch though, because I was not using it. I went for after I finished Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey, I just went through this period where I was probably 6-7 months and I just didn't play it. I played a little bit of Skyrim every now and then. My 3 most played games on there were Breath of the Wild, Skyrim and Odyssey, and I had quite a lot of other games. I just never played them because I guess it just wasn't for me. Like, I do most of my gaming at home, so I want to play on a big TV, high resolution, so that's the PlayStation on my PC. I never felt comfortable taking it out on the bus or anything like that in London, and a lot of the games which came out were just not my type of thing. And so Breath of the Wild I am super excited about. I'm also going to say that I don't believe that game's going to be out for a very long time. I mean, minimum 2 to 3 years. Like, I don't think it's going to be next year. I would be pretty shocked if it was 2021, but looks like they're using the same game engine, so could be. I'm pretty shocked that it's Breath of the Wild 2. But I do kind of understand that, because Breath of the Wild 1 was such a big hit that I can kind of understand them wanting to do a bit more with it on there. Lots of theories about what it's going to be about and what you can do. I'm just super excited to play in that world a bit more and do more things and see where we go from there, really. The teaser looked really cool. It says trailer, I guess, but it was kind of more of a teaser. And I will buy a Switch when that comes out and pick it up again. I think I'll be able to pick one up quite cheap, because as I said, I think it'll be like 2-3 years. But really, that's the only thing on this list that actually excites me. Luigi's Mansion 3, I think, is something where I'm like, yeah, I'd probably pick it up if I owned a Switch, but it wouldn't make me get one. Animal Crossing, never been into. Pokemon, never been into. Legend of Zelda, it looks cool, but again, it's one of those things where I think, as somebody whose first Zelda game was Wind Waker, it doesn't excite me to play Link's Awakening, because I've never played it. It doesn't make me want to go out and buy a Switch, if that makes sense. Mario Maker 2, no interest in it, to be completely honest with you. No Astro Train. Ultimate Alliance 3, I actually loved Ultimate Alliance 1 and 2, so I'm quite sad that that's a Switch exclusive. Again, not enough to make me think, oh, I regret selling my Switch, but enough that I'm like, oh, I would have got that on Switch if it was reviewed quite well, because I really enjoyed Ultimate Alliance. I think they're very underrated games, actually. Cadence of Hyrule, never been into Crypto Necromancer, but I think that's cool that they've done a crossover there. And then Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, never played. Just nothing else there for me. I can totally understand that for people who are Nintendo fans. Like, this is huge, Animal Crossing, Pokemon, Link's Awakening, Breath of the Wild 2, Luigi, like, huge big stuff. But like, this is why I'm saying, like, people who turn around and be like, oh, so and so won E3, it's just completely subjective as to what you like. You can turn around and say, of course, like, hey, I think they had a really good conference. They released a lot of exciting looking games, and the presentation was great. And from the Nintendo one, that is definitely what you can say. They always do a pretty good job, I think, there. Moving on to Microsoft. Microsoft did their thing again, where they just were like, yeah, we're just going to shove in like 60 games in like 100 minutes and just completely like overwhelm everyone with the amount of games kind of going in here. As I said, they announced the Project Scarlet, which we'll go into after we've been through this. Other things we saw, Halo Infinite, looked cool. Definitely get that. But it's coming to PC, so why on earth would I get an Xbox? I'll go into this when we talk about Project Scarlet, but there is no point if you own a PC to buying an Xbox. And I kind of feel like they've screwed themselves over a little bit with that, but I also feel like it was a good decision as well. So I don't know, that's weird. Gears 5, I haven't really been into the Gears of War series since 2, I think. So it doesn't appeal too much to me. Blair Witch has no interest from me. I'm sure there will be a lot of those YouTubers who will lap that up, you know, the ones. The Star Wars Skywalker saga actually does seem quite interesting. That might be something I look at. I do love the Lego Star Wars games. I didn't get the kind of Force Awakens one, or was there a Last Jedi one? I don't know. I'm sure there was. But this apparently is like a whole new thing. Going to go through the whole Skywalker saga as well. So that actually looks pretty cool. I might look into that. Bleeding Edge, it looks like some sort of like Overwatch style 3v3 thing with no interest in. Battletoads, no interest in. Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. Now you've got my attention. I loved Age of Empires. I thought there was like a HD remastered edition. I don't know what's different about the Definitive Edition, but personally, I want to see a new Age of Empires game. But I guess they don't have that. But I'll look into this Definitive Edition. Wasteland 3 looks cool. I really liked Wasteland 2, so I'm interested in Wasteland 3. Flight Sim, that's cool that's kind of coming back. I'm not a big flight sim guy, but I know it's huge. Like that genre is one of those things where it's like, if you're just the type of guy who games casually and kind of has a look and sees what the big new games from EA or Ubisoft or what those companies are that come out, then you won't realize that there is a huge flight sim community there that is massive. So that could be big, but that flight sim community is also completely ruthless, and if that game is not 100% accurate in every single way, they will rip it to shreds. So bear that in mind. Microsoft, obviously Microsoft Flight Sim is like as old as time itself. I remember playing that on like an old 486. It's a real classic. Minecraft Dungeons actually intrigued me. I don't think it's going to be for me, but I quite like the fact that they've done a little spin-off game there. It's like a kind of Diablo style game. What is it? They call it like an action RPG type thing. Looks isometric. I think they said you could have like 4-player co-op on like the same screen or the same console or whatever. It looked all right. Again, I don't know if it's going to be any good, if it's going to have much depth to it, but I quite like the idea of them using that kind of Minecraft IP for doing a few other things, because again, people forget, like with Minecraft, they look at it and like, I love Minecraft. I think it's one of the greatest games that has ever been made. I think because it's been going for so long, it's had that thing where it's kind of like, it was cool and then it became really uncool, and now it's kind of becoming a little bit cool again. And but also for a lot of people, they look at it and go, it's just a dumb kids game. And obviously that's like saying, the Toy Story films are just dumb kids films. I mean, of course they have a lot of, or The Simpsons is just a dumb kids show. Of course there is a lot of stuff there for kids, but there's also a very adult kind of undertone to it with things you can do. And the amazing thing about Minecraft is it is so creative that the things people have built in it are incredible. So I think people underrate Minecraft a lot, and I don't have a problem with them doing like IPs and things like that differently, because it has a massive kids market. Kids love it. I absolutely adore it. Forza Lego, yes, please, absolutely. I enjoyed Forza 4. I haven't really played much of it, but I just loved the look of that Lego one. It looked really cool. Gears Pop just needs to die in a fire. That just looks horrific, but we always knew it was going to be. They've got Borderlands 3 and The Outer Worlds here. Borderlands 3, I enjoyed Borderlands 2. Played it a little bit. on the channel, and it looks good. So yeah, I'll definitely check out Borderlands 3 without a doubt. The Outer Worlds as well. People seem to be incredibly hyped for the Outer Worlds, and I'm not quite sure why. I think it looks really good. It's by Obsidian, so I'm like, hey, that is also really interesting. But I'm also like, the one thing which bugged me about it was, I think it was Obsidian was saying that it's a shorter game, like it was a smaller game, and I was like, the thing I kind of love about Obsidian games is that they're huge, and there's like multiple endings and multiple playthroughs, and like there's so much stuff to explore and discover. And they kind of, I can't remember where I read it or heard it, but they kind of said it was like one of their smaller games. I was like, oh, not sure. I could be wrong though. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. The EA conference, I mean, am I the only one who's like not at all excited by Jedi Fallen Order? Like, I wasn't that excited about it when they announced it because it was EA, and I was like, oh god. And I don't want to get on the whole EA bad memes. EA have made some really good games in the past. Okay, they have made some good games, and the whole microtransactions thing is disgusting, like, to say the least. And for that alone, they do deserve a massive amount of hate. But people do forget that they have made good games. So just because EA are making a game doesn't mean it's going to be terrible. But I was like, oh god. And then it's like, oh, it's like an action like game, and I'm like, oh god, because I'm just one of these snooty people whose favourite Star Wars game is Knights of the Old Republic, and it's just incredible, and nothing can ever beat it. And if they announced Knights of the Old Republic 3, I'd probably be sitting here going, oh, how, because I just don't know if EA can ever get Star Wars right. But this doesn't look good. I'm sorry to those out there. Firstly, I hate the fact that you have to play as an actual character. You can't create your own. The Star Wars universe is so diverse and rich. Like, somebody just give us the ability to create different races and characters in a Star Wars game. Generic, white human guy is so boring. Like, I'm not one of these people who's like, every game needs to have diversity, rah rah rah, but it looks so generic that it's actually painful. And listen, when you have a game which is based on like Earth and stuff like that, you can kind of get away with that a little bit. But when you have something based in a universe with countless alien species who can all be Jedi, then that looks so plain and boring that I was just like, oh god. Then you got the little droid thing, which is clearly like a, oh look, BB-8's really popular, let's do something with ours. And it's like, oh god. And then like the combat just looked really uninspired, like really uninspired, and I'm just like, oh my god, what is this? Of course we don't know. Like, of course I'll watch reviews and do stuff like that, and people are saying like, oh, they didn't show off the best bits in like the closed like demos of it and stuff like that. All the best bits were in there. Well, listen, I mean, there better be some other good bits, because that really did not interest me in whatsoever at all, in any way, shape or form. I'm not hyped for that game, but people would be like, oh yeah, but it's by the guys who did Titanfall, and Titanfall's cool. And it's like, I mean, cool, but this isn't a first person shooter, so it's got wall running. Oh wow. Apex Legends doesn't interest me. Battlefield 5 doesn't really interest me. But The Sims 4 Island Living actually looked really cool, and I will say that like that community for a game that is so old, what is it, like 6 or 7 years old now, for The Sims 4, like, is amazing. And The Sims 4 is a cool game, by the way. Like, if you haven't played The Sims, it's a cool game. It's a lot of fun, and that community is massive, and there are people loving the hell out of that game. And that is definitely a game where they have come back from a lot of criticism from the community about expansions and what people were getting for their money, and they've listened to that and they're making changes to it. So if people think that EA is all about the greed and everything like that, they can, these people with these games, that it could be because maybe EA felt like they've milked every single penny out of The Sims 4 now, and they're just at a point where they're like, listen, anything we get from this now, let's not piss off our community, because The Sims 5 might be out in a few years time and we don't want to alienate everyone from that. But I do feel like the developers of that and the people who work on that game genuinely care about the game, and you don't continue to work on a game for as long as they have done with that if you don't. Like, it's not just a paycheck. They could have just stopped it and moved on to something else, you know. So yeah, check out The Sims 4 if you haven't. It's dirt cheap, just the base game. Obviously, if you want to buy all the expansions, you're gonna have to take out a second mortgage, but you know, that's the way it is. FIFA 20. Hey, we brought back the five-a-side FIFA bit that was in like the games like 8 years ago, but it's an all new feature. It's like, oh, fuck off. Whenever I saw like, it's like, oh, you can create your own character in it, and they've got outfits and stuff, and it's like, oh, you're gonna have to pay for all those outfits, or they're gonna be, you either pay for them, like you get them in packs in like loot boxes, which, don't worry, you can earn them in game. Yeah, if you play the game for like 50 hours and grind through the currency, which the only probably the only thing you can earn the currency in is that it's a different currency for like each section of the game, you know. So for that there's a currency, for Ultimate Team there's a currency, for everything else there's a currency, and it's just like, yeah, don't care. I was over FIFA 19. I'm well over FIFA 20. I really am. Madden, I mean, anybody who's seen my Madden video will know I'm the greatest Madden player that's ever existed. But it's the same as FIFA, isn't it, really? FIFA 20 Legacy Edition. How is it a legacy if the game isn't even out? Anyway, Cyberpunk 2077. Listen, Keanu Reeves. I mean, I'm not like the crazy for Keanu guy, okay? I watched John Wick 1. I was like, this is alright, but I wasn't blown away by it. I preferred like The Raid or something like that. Personally, I'm more of martial arts than kind of gun shooting things, maybe because I'm English. But even I was like, that's cool. That's really cool. When they showed him in that trailer and then he came out on stage at the Microsoft conference, I was like, okay, that you've earned a lot of like internet points today, CD Projekt Red and Microsoft, for that. Of all the people they could possibly have put in to the game, Keanu Reeves, I think, is the one that the internet would have gone craziest for. I don't know if there would be another person on Earth that they could have put in that game who would have created as much of stir. Like, whatever they paid Keanu Reeves to be in that game, they will make back 1,000,000 times over, I'm telling you, because he's so big, like, in terms of, like, internet points, you know, that, like, his name is everywhere. It still is everywhere. There's still going to be so many memes about it and stuff like that that you won't be able to get away from it. We didn't really see anything else from the game, though, did we? That's the kind of thing we got. Did we get a release date for it? I think we did, didn't we? It's coming out in 2020, like March, is it? Cyberpunk 2077 release date 16th of April 2020. Sooner than I thought, to be fair. They have been working on it quite a while, so it's not like super quick, but I thought this might have been like late 2020, if not early 2021. Without doubt, this is going to be one of the most hyped games in existence, because of The Witcher 3. I think looking back on The Witcher 3, with, you know, obviously I love The Witcher 3. Like, it's an incredible game. I will say that the combat was a little bit clunky in some places with certain things, especially like using a crossbow and stuff like that. And this is, I think, the first person shooter type game that they have done, CD Projekt Red. So my worry is from the gameplay point of view, but they'll probably most likely nail the story and characters and everything like that, because they always did such a good job with that. Admittedly, The Witcher, like Cyberpunk, to be fair, is a universe that they acquired rather than created themselves. But if you can do that and then you can turn that into something that is its own skill, and they seem to be pretty good at that. So I am very, very excited for Cyberpunk 2077. I think it looks like it could be pretty incredible. people were saying, I think I saw Greg Miller say that, like, from what he's seen in behind the scenes stuff, like, if this game actually lives up to that stuff that he's seen, it will win all the awards going, and rightfully so, and it will be talked about for a long time. It's a big, my expectation of Cyberpunk right now, from what I've seen, is that we're going to have this huge city to explore. There's going to be all these different, like, quests. There's going to be really cool kind of gunplay, obviously RPG elements, lots of branching stories, and I'm like, there's not many games that have pulled that off. Really not that many games that have pulled that off. When you look at The Witcher 3, it does have, like, arching stories, but ultimately you kind of come back to pretty similar endings. I don't know if Cyberpunk's going to have this kind of same thing. Or you look at something like Dragon Age or Mass Effect, like, they have decision making, but it doesn't really go there. A lot of games talk about your decisions matter, blah blah blah, but they generally don't. They're like, what they matter on is whether or not this character lives or dies or something like that. I can kind of live with that, because I understand that, like, making all these decisions matter, across this entire huge game is going to be really difficult. But I feel like from an expectation level of Cyberpunk, that's what I expect in this huge sprawling world, so much to discover and detail to look at with all these people in there. And I'm like, am I expecting too much from this game? Like, can it pull this off? Because that would be more than any game's ever done in existence. To have that level of branching pathway, to have this exciting gunplay, to have this huge sprawling, city, with, driving around in a car, also on foot, all these amazing characters in it, as well as this huge kind of, like, RPG style upgrade system. Is this too much that we're expecting from this game, or can they actually pull it off? Because if they pull it off, this is going to be a game changer. But I mean, these guys are, and I don't like to use the word indie when you're talking about a company as big as CD Projekt Red, but they are kind of indie, It's going to be crazy. We've seen hype like this before on other games, and it's not come about, but we'll see, I guess. Witcher 3 is coming to Switch, which I don't know why. I don't know who asked for that, but there you go. You got it on Switch. Enjoy. The Bethesda conference, a lot of people said this was pretty weak. I didn't really watch it, to be honest with you. Doom Eternal looks cool. Ghostwire I thought looked really cool, actually. Ghostwire Tokyo looked really cool, as did Deathloop. They both looked really good. I'm really interested in those games. Deathloop, I think, is by the guys who did Dishonored, and it's kind of about these two people who seem to be on an island, and they're stuck in this death loop. Like, every time they die, they come back to life, and they're just kind of going against each other, and it seems like a really interesting concept. So I'm quite excited by that. Ghostwire Tokyo has a really cool, interesting trailer, and I like the idea of this kind of Japanese style game, coinciding with kind of the Western style of Bethesda. Like, I think that could be really interesting. Blades is coming to the Switch. Blades gets a lot of shit. I actually thought it was quite a fun game. Yes, there are obnoxious timers in the game and microtransactions. What mobile game doesn't have that, guys? Come on. Like, honestly. I feel like they're getting shit because... Well, they are getting shit because they kind of said they wouldn't do that and then they did it, which is fair. But I also don't feel like it's that bad a game. Fallout 76 Nuclear Winter. I'm a big Fallout 76 fan. Yeah, there are a few of us out there. It's a Battle Royale mode. I played it. Battle Royale, never really liked it. I don't like the fact that it's locked third person. But I was like, yeah, you know what? This is alright. It's not bad. I won't play it, but, I think there's a lot of people out there who have a lot of fun with it, actually, so fair play. It's free, so what do you want? Wolfenstein Youngblood. I actually picked up the Wolfenstein 2 because I played a bit of number 1 and was like, this is alright, but I never finished it. And I thought, 2 was like on sale for like £15 or something. I was like, I'll pick it up and try it. So I'm going to play through a bit of that and see. But I'm not really into the Wolfenstein kind of whole thing. Commander Keen, I'm not even going to get into that. That's an abomination. That needs to die in a fire alongside Gears Pop, like it really does. Square Enix, again, if you are a kind of Square Enix fan, or like a Japanese RPG fan, then this is like the best conference you've ever seen in your life. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think it's cool and all, but again, I don't think it deserves all the hype it's getting. Final Fantasy, like cool. If you're into Final Fantasy, this looks really great. I'm not really into Final Fantasy though, so there's nothing there that actually interests me whatsoever. But if you are into that stuff, then awesome. Ubisoft. Okay, so there's a couple of things here that actually really interest me. So Breakpoint, I've actually done a video talking about when the first trailer for that came out, playing it through a bit of Wildlands, because I really like Wildlands actually. It's a game I've gotten back into recently and I really like it. It's not perfect by any means, but I really like it. Breakpoint, you'd think I'd be really excited about, but there's something about that game that really worries me, and it's the overuse of drones. And this seems to be a thing with Ubisoft. They love drones, and I'm not quite sure why, but they do. Watch Dogs as well. Yeah, I am really excited though for Breakpoint. It does look flipping awesome. I'm just a bit like, why is there so many drones? I kind of want to shoot people, not drones. But anyway, there you go. But I'm super excited for Breakpoint. As I said, I have done a video which I'll actually make go live. I uploaded it. I just, for whatever reason, haven't actually had it go live yet. Division 2, I've spoken about Division 2. I think I did a video on it. Have I even made that go live? I can't remember. Where it's like, I really love Division 2, but after a while it's like, it's just so samey that you're like, oh. So I completed it through and I got to the whole Black Tusk thing. I did about half the Black Tusk stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can go through and do more of this. But I had a great time with the things I did do, and I'm like, it's well worth picking up, I think, for everyone out there. But this is one of those ones where I'm like, do I really want to like do another like 10 hours of this? And I'm like, not really. But any Division 2 content I'm interested in. I really like the game. I think it's very good. For Honor has its peeps, but you know, I'm not one of them. Watch Dogs Legion. Now, any game that they set in London immediately has my attention. So I watched a trailer for it and I was like, okay, kind of cool that there's a granny in it. I'm like that. That's very cool. And then I watched the gameplay kind of trailer thing extended by like 10 minutes. And I was like, this seems cool. At first I was very skeptical of the whole, hey, you can play as anyone, because I like the idea I've always liked the idea in a game, like I'm really into role-playing games, so I like having my own character that I can build up, you know, create, build up. I love that. So being like, hey, you can play as all these different characters kind of loses something a little bit for me. But when I watched the kind of gameplay trailer, I was like, actually, this does seem pretty cool. Plus, I am probably just going to play as the old granny a lot. The fact that it's set in England is cool. I wasn't totally down with it to begin with, because I was a bit like, oh god, it's so going to be so stereotypical. Like, there's going to be a guy who drinks tea all the time, and then there's going to be like a, you know, really like rough, like, yeah, you're right mate type guy, and then there's going to be like a really like hoity-toity like person. They're going to roll out all the like British stereotypes, and to be fair, they kind of did do that, but it wasn't that bad, so I can probably get over that. I will just have fun wandering around it. It's an interesting kind of dystopian future of London. Maybe not too far off what we're actually going to. We'll see. Art imitating life, imitating art. Yeah. But I'm actually really excited by that. So I think Ghost Recon and Watch Dogs Legions, for me, are the two games I'm probably most excited for that are coming out this year, I want to say. I'm pretty sure Breakpoint's coming out this year. I don't know about Watch Dogs Legion. Cyberpunk is the game I'm most excited for, full stop. But obviously that's next year. Breakpoint release date is 4th October this year. Yeah, I knew that was this year. So that's going to be cool. I will be on that one, day one. Watch Dogs Legion. The release date is 6th of March 2020. Okay, so that's next year, so fair enough. It wouldn't really make sense for them to release Breakpoint and then Legion, to be fair, within the same kind of period, so I understand that. But yeah, very good. They had other things as well. Gods and Monsters, Roller Champions, not my type of thing necessarily, but we'll see. But I'm very excited for those two games. So there's like 3 games I'm super excited for, I guess, coming out. And then Ghostwire, Deathloop, I'm really interested in. They look very cool. Doom Eternal, I'm interested in. Halo Infinite I am, but that's quite a long way away. Breath of the Wild 2, it's not that much, to be fair. And then going down as well, Panzer Dragoon remake. Who asked for this? Anything in Namco? Nope. Various. So Elden Ring is the FromSoft game, which is written, or sorry, not written by, but George R.R. Martin, which stands for Railroad, by the way, George Railroad Martin. He wrote about. He contributed to. I should say he wrote it because he didn't write it. Dying Light 2 looks really cool. I think that's gone very under the radar. Like, that looked very cool when it, like, you saw all the stuff from that. These other games, I could really take it or leave it, to be completely honest with you, on most of them. Way to the Woods, for some reason I thought that was like a golf game. Way to Tiger Woods. But anyway, yeah, so as I said, like, for me personally, I don't think I was completely enamoured. Like, I was more hyped by the latest Death Stranding trailer than I was for anything on this list, probably, with the exception of probably Cyberpunk, because that just looks like it's something else on another planet, and I'm excited for that, because I don't know if I'm the only one, but, like, video games are great and I love them to bits, but I do feel like we're in this cycle now where they just get a little bit graphically better, the worlds get a little bit bigger, you get this little bit technological advancement, because they just come out at such a pace that you don't see the advancement as much. So when I saw, for example, Watch Dogs Legion, I was like, this doesn't look graphically any better than Watch Dogs 2. When I see Ghost Recon Breakpoint, it does look better than Wildlands, but not to a point where it doesn't really look much better than Division 2. So I'm like, we're not seeing that advancement because everything's coming out so quickly. So with something like Cyberpunk, I'm hoping we are going to see something that is different and unique and new and just executed to such a high level that it's incredibly impressive. And then with something like Death Stranding, I really hope that we just get something fucking bonkers that I'm like, holy crap, what is this? Because I'm super excited for that game as well when it comes out. And they're the sort of games that make you buy console, we saw this kind of with Breath of the Wild in a way. There were people going out buying Switches because they heard so much about this game from people that they just had to try it, and there's certain games out there which do that and define their generation, and I don't feel like we've had that yet. So I hope that maybe something like Cyberpunk, and I don't necessarily I don't mean defines the generation of console, like, oh, this is the PlayStation 4 game. I mean, like, defines the generation of gaming as a whole. Like, you're like, hey, you remember that year, how much like Cyberpunk blew you away? Like, I remember how much Breath of the Wild blew me away. And I was just like, wow, this is fucking incredible. Certain games which just come out and you're like, holy shit, like when like fucking Ridge Racer came out for like the first time, and you're like, oh my god, was it Ridge Racer? Yeah, maybe. Or like Virtua Fighter, and it was like in 3D, or when like the first like 3D like football game came out, and then FIFA started doing like more realistic things, but then because it became like every single year, you just lost that interest in it. I'm trying to think like what else. Witcher 3, when Witcher 3 came out, that defined, I think, its generation, because you were just like, oh my god, this is like, they've taken everything about open world games and like narrative stories and just made this incredible game with incredible characters, and it was awesome. So I'm hoping that Cyberpunk or Death Stranding define this current generation now we're in, like this year, next year type thing of games. We'll see. Project Scarlet is the new Xbox thingy-majiggy. I probably haven't got like the best page on it here. I don't know if there was an Xbox page for it, but from what we know, I mean, they're saying like, if rumor has it, there could be 3 Xbox Scarlet SKUs available at launch, with the pricing chat even more intriguing. So they're saying like, it could be around Xbox One X type pricing, for like $450, something like that, because it sounds impressive. And they're saying like the Xbox One at launch, you could buy it with the controller. Oh my god, remember Connect for $429. Like, that was a lot. God, remember Connect. The interesting thing is going to be like they were like, hey, it has like up to 8K, and it's like, hang on a minute, shut up. You can't, like, I said about this generation of like consoles when they're like, yeah, it does 4K, so like the PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X, and it's like, yeah, it doesn't technically do, like, yes, the resolution is 4K, okay, fine, but it's like 4K with like everything turned down, which is like, it's not really 4K, is it? Or it's like checkerboard. It's like, that's not 4K. If I feel like this generation they fucked up because I think they went too fast too quick. So I feel like they went from 1080p with the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and then they went like, slightly better 1080p with the PlayStation 4, with slightly better like frames per second, like they were trying to get more to 60, and I felt like the pros should have tried to go for 2K at a higher frame rate. But I feel like they tried to jump it to 4K. They were like, this is the buzzword. Everyone's getting these 4K TVs. We need a console that can do that. And they didn't really quite have that there. So maybe this is a generation where we do get that. I still feel like we're at a situation where it's going to be super expensive to get that level of, like, they're going to have to, if they're selling it for like 400, 450, they're going to take a hell of a hit on that. Like, they really are, because if they're getting something which is really playing like 4K, I mean, you're talking PCs, you're talking 1,200, 1,500 for PCs that are playing 4K at 60. That's, and I know it's different when you're building an Xbox, you get parts cheaper, etc., etc., but you don't get them like £1,000 cheaper. I love the way that they're all like, SSDs, super fast, no more loading. It's like, fucking SSDs have been around for so long. You can fit an SSD in your PlayStation 4, for Christ's sake. Like, it's really like, why not? The fact that they were still putting, like, they are still to this day putting mechanical hard drives in like consoles is beyond me. I cannot understand it. SSDs are so cheap nowadays that it's utterly ridiculous. It's like, you can get a 500 gig SSD, like M.2, which, form factor wise is tiny, for less than 50 quid, and that's what you're buying. That's not even what Microsoft or PlayStation would be paying for it. So yeah, that for me is laughable, that they're like, SSD, we've got our own SSD in here, stuff like that. And it's like, Jesus Christ, that technology's been around. When I brought my PC back 7 years ago, SSDs weren't new then. So yeah, anyway, so yeah, they kind of announced it, they had these buzzwords about it and stuff like that, but we didn't really get anything interesting, like actual kind of like, this is what it's going to be. It is interesting though from a like PC point of view, because we have so we have like this. So those who aren't really into like PC stuff, I'll try and keep it brief, but basically from the CPU kind of side of things, you have two main people. You really only have two people: Intel, AMD. On the graphics cards, you have two. You have NVIDIA and AMD. In the CPU style, Intel and AMD are very competitive, and in actual fact, Intel, to be fair, have been ahead. Intel, sorry, Jesus Christ. So Intel and AMD on the CPUs Intel have been ahead for quite a long time. AMD was seen as the more kind of like value for money option. Like Intel just made super like high-end ones. They made lower-end ones as well, but generally their lower-end ones weren't as good as AMD. But that might be changing soon because AMD have got a new lineup coming, the 3000, the Ryzen 3000, and it looks like that could blow away Intel, not just in terms of money, but in terms of performance as well. In terms of the graphics card, Nvidia have not been beaten in any way by AMD. Again, AMD have really good budget options, but still Nvidia are still very strong on the budget side of things as well. Nvidia did kind of fuck up a little bit because they had this whole ray tracing thing, which apparently the Xbox Scarlet will have ray tracing, but I don't think people give two shits about ray tracing right now because it is such a like resource demand like thing right now. In a few years time, like 5 years time, ray tracing could be massive. It is impressive, but it, you know, even like the highest end graphics cards nowadays struggle with it. So how the hell is an Xbox gonna, Xbox Scarlet coming in at like a 400 450 price point gonna do ray tracing in any sort of playable state? I don't know. Maybe a pared down one, like like half ray tracing or something like that. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. You've got the whole xCloud thing, their kind of answer, I guess, to this streaming thing. We'll see again about the whole streaming thing. I think Google kind of in the best place for that because they've got the most information out there. I've tried PlayStation now. It's not very good in terms of latency. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I kind of said before at the beginning, if you own a PC, there is no point whatsoever buying an Xbox because literally all their exclusive games you will get on PC. Not that there are that many. They keep buying studios and not releasing video games from them, so I don't know what that's about. But they will eventually, I'm sure. I think I think Xbox are really focusing on this generation coming up. I think they've realised they've lost this generation now, which they have, absolutely. And I think their thought is, we need to build for the next generation. We need to have the best console and we need to have the best exclusive games on there with people making those games, for our unit. Because that's where PlayStation's won. They had the more powerful console, which was just better, and they won because their games were better. They rarely went wrong with their exclusive games. Microsoft completely went wrong on nearly every exclusive game they had on the Xbox One. You can still have a great time with the Xbox One. It's still a good console, but from a game point of view, like the PlayStation is just miles ahead, just absolutely miles ahead. And I think Xbox realised that. They brought a lot of studios, a lot of very good studios, and I think they're hoping to build games for the next platform which are exclusive, or at least maybe like timed exclusive, shall we say, and kind of build on it from there, which, I hope they do become competitive again and are not just relying on past glories of the Xbox 360 and etc. and can make great games, because again, it's only good for the consumer if they're focusing on making great games rather than the other stuff they were focusing on before, like media center stuff. Then that is only good for people playing video games because we get the best games. Yeah, I was saying kind of before, I think I got a bit off topic about the whole PC side of things. And I was going to say that like AMD are making they make the CPU and GPU for the consoles. So if they're beginning to make PC parts, which are beginning to become possibly the best, high-end ones as well as the best value ones, that can only be good for console as well, because it proves that their kind of R&D and their ability is huge. But we'll see. We will see what that kind of comes about with. So this has probably been a really long thing. I hope you guys have enjoyed it anyway. Let me know what you think. What are your favourite games? What do you think of the Scarlet? Would you get it? What do you think of Stadia? It's exciting times at the end of the day. I've said this before, I think last year, we're living in a golden age because, I think a lot of people who are maybe, maybe teens, early 20s. I don't remember the times back when like video gaming was almost underground. It was almost thought of as like a bad thing. And a lot of people look through with very rose-tinted glasses at the early consoles, the early Nintendo, the Segas, things like that, and a lot of those games were really good fun, but obviously there's nothing compared to what you're getting nowadays. Absolutely nothing. Even I know it's just the way technology advanced, but you have to appreciate how quickly technology advanced. Like, a game which comes out nowadays, which doesn't, you're like, oh, that doesn't look quite so good nowadays. If you went back 5 years, that would be the best looking game there was. It's just that things are advancing so quickly now that we are just getting better and better things all the time, because this has become a multi-billion pound industry, and that can only be a good thing. Like, it clearly is the future. Like, I feel like the movie market is going to go down because the video game market's going up. People always thought things like Netflix and stuff that would kill like cinema, but I genuinely believe like video games is going to kill cinema, because it's one thing to sit in a cinema and watch something, but to be there and experience it is something completely different. So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.